Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Road to COP28 session that we had in plans to organize, and has been a lot of engagement. There's the hope to have a lot of engagement within youth when it comes to UN international conferences, climate conferences, and we are here to support young people who want to know more about how complicated these spaces can be and how to make them simple and break it down for you. So with that, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Muskan Lodhi. I'm from New Delhi, India. I have been associated with Care About Climate since last year. I am the communications manager. So everything that you see on our social media and outreach is what I take care of. And I'm very, very excited to introduce you to our moderator today, Mujida Ajibola. She has also been with the organization since 2 years now, more than 2 years. And she is our program manager for our International Climate Policy and Advocacy course, which has had a lot of hard work from young people. It is a for youth and by youth course that our team has developed. So with that, we also have a wonderful negotiator join us today, who we will be introducing once we are over with our presentations and the initial information that we'd like all of you to have, and then you can ask all your questions, note them down, and henceforth we'll begin. So over to you now, Mujida, and I will be sharing my screen so that all of you can also see the presentation. All right. Yes, Mujida, please take it over.
Hi, everyone. Good evening from Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Mujida, and I am pleased to be here this evening to share with us some of the things that are very important for us to maximize our action at COP28. So, as we all know, we are from Care About Climate, and we are a youth-led organization that has a global spread. And what we aim to do is to build capacity for young people, meeting them wherever they are in their climate advocacy journey, so that they are able to contribute effectively into international climate policy and action, as well as advocacy in their home countries. And this evening, we are going to be running you through some of the programs that we have at Care About Climate before we go into the major session. One of the programs that we have is the International Climate Policy and Advocacy course, which I lead the team. And it's a course that is designed to build the capacities of global climate advocates to ensure that they are able to understand how they can build capacity and engage effectively at international climate decision making spaces. We all are aware that these international climate decision making spaces can be a bit technical, and they are usually very chaotic with tons of things happening at the same time. So for you to be able to attend COP and make a difference, you need to be equipped, and that is what the course does for you. Another of our projects is the NDC project. And this NDC project is a project that analyzes the NDCs of different countries. And we ensure that it is the citizens of those countries that analyze their own NDCs, so that at the end of the day, their findings and recommendations are able to guide the upcoming NDC for their country. And it also helps local action and policy advocacy by the nationals of that country in that country. And aside that, we have a localized system where we want to help young people to be able to make a change within their communities. So as I always say, if we do all of the policy and the advocacy, it has to translate to local action, on the ground action in communities and countries. That is why we have our communities of practice, which we call the CAC clubs, and these clubs build capacities of people through mentoring, local projects in communities where we, in countries where we have presence in, and we support them by ensuring that they have a climate education toolkit, as well as forming a community of practice, which helps them to provide support for one another and be able to make change happen. Another amazing thing that we do is attending international climate conferences. We all know that policy happens at this conference, policy making happens at those spaces, and aside the advocacy, we also have to be there and lend our voice to the causes that are dear to us. And in doing this, we attend COP itself, just like we have the upcoming one, and we also have delegates that attend the SBs, and recently we started attending the regional climate weeks, and you can see more about these highlights on our social media pages, ably managed by Muskan and our incredible team. So I feel like at this point, we may want to move into the crux of the session. So as we approach COP28, we want to start asking ourselves, what exactly is COP? So like I said, we try to meet people wherever they are. So some of you who are already familiar with COP may see some things that you're already familiar with. It's also a refresher for you. And some people do not have that knowledge at all. So we are quickly going to breeze through some of these things. So COP is basically the conference of the parties, and it is the annual meeting, which is also the global decision-making meeting organized by the UNFCCC, right, which is the UN arm that deals with climate change mitigation and adaptation in countries. And at this international conference, which happens every year, we have member states that are called parties attend, and also observers. So observers are people who are from NGOs and non-profits who do not have the opportunity to attend as the negotiators or part of their country delegations, who are called parties. But all of these people come together to negotiate on international agreements that have to do with climate change. Now, it is worthy to point that observers do not have the ability to negotiate. It is people who are part of their country delegations that are called negotiators that can negotiate and take decisions on behalf of their countries at COP. But it doesn't mean that observers are there to just literally observe. There are lots of things that observers can do and can actually make a change, as we are going to see shortly. So when does COP happen? COP is usually held in November, right, with host countries chosen through the decision-making process of UNFCCC, where it is rotated across different regions every year. And it's usually for 2 weeks, and it's an annual event. So for each country that hosts COP, that country is saddled with the responsibility of organizing the COP for that year and also presides. So we call that country the COP presidency. That means that for this year, the COP presidency is going to be the United Arab Emirates. And sometimes we have situations, not always though, where for a particular year, the COP will be hosted outside the hosting country itself, the presiding country itself. And that happened at COP23, where it was Fiji that was the COP presidency, but it was hosted in Germany. Who can attend COP? Like I said earlier, you can attend COP as a member of your country delegation, and you are called a party, and you can also attend COP as an observer. Also, people that are able to attend COP are people who are media people. And whether you're attending as a media person or as an observer, you have to be approved. You have to have an approval and an accreditation to attend COP. And for you to have that accreditation, you must be affiliated to an organization or media media outfit that has been that has the approval, yes, accreditation to attend COP. So it's not just, oh, I want to go to COP and I go to COP. If I have to do that, then it means I'm going to be restricted only to the green zone. So what are the things that have happened at COP, and how has COP fared over the years? So at COP, when you attend COP, there are different things. You know, the climate space is a very vast one. So there are different things that are discussed at COP, and we have issues ranging from the NDCs to adaptation measures, to climate technology, climate finance. A lot of things are discussed, and that's why it is important for you, before you attend COP, to be clear about where your interest lies majorly, and then you are able to tailor your activities towards that. Also, COP has two main zones. We have the blue zone and the green zone. Every COP has that, irrespective of the country. So the blue zone, where the negotiations happen, and the green zone is basically for exhibitions and other activities. So if you have an accredited UNFCCC badge, you can get into the blue zone, although if you are an observer, you may not be able to have access to all meeting rooms. However, if you don't have the accreditation, but you happen to be a resident of the country, or you're just in that country at that time, you have the opportunity to visit the green zone of COP, because that is open to the general public once you satisfy the security protocols, or whatever entry requirements that is needed for that green zone. You're able to enter, and then you have access to see what organizations are showcasing as the actions that they're taking, their exhibitions, and all of that. Now, people ask every year, you guys go to COP, why do you go to COP every year? Why do you have to burn emissions to attend COP every year, right? So it's very important for us to attend COP, because it is that central meeting, kind of, where everybody comes together. Whatever it is we have been doing in our different countries, we all come together to say, hey, this is working in my country. So it's kind of like a community of practice, and you can say, oh, this is working in my country, we can scale it in your other countries, you can adapt it. And it is also a place where countries can come together and say, we are experiencing this impact of climate change, we want you to support us, we need support from this, or we even have actions that we want other countries to take, so it's very important for all of us to come together and set ambitious commitments. And you're also able to follow up with the with the commitments that countries have made the previous years. Now, COP is, for like every good thing, it will have its merits and its demerits, so there have been some challenges that have been identified in the COP structure and processes. One of them is the lack of enforcement. So we don't have the commitments people make or countries make at COP are not mandatory. Countries are only encouraged to live up to their commitments, right? To follow up their commitments with actions. But it's not like you have a sanction that is imposed against a country that doesn't do that. So that kind of makes it look like it is weak. The implementation system might be a bit weak because there are no strict sanctions. And then because of that, it also translates to having inadequate ambition by some countries, because they know that there are no penal measures against them if they don't do. People just have to be encouraged to do what is right. Another thing is that there is a decision-making mechanism at COP, which ensures that for every decision that has to be taken, all the parties, and there are 198 parties to the UNFCCC treaty that established COP. So that means that all of these 198 different countries must agree. If one of them has a dissenting opinion, that decision will not be able to be agreed upon. So that makes it slow. That makes it slow for decisions to be taken, and it also kind of slows down progress. So we finished COP27 last year, and now we are looking at COP28. As we are looking at COP28, we need to ask ourselves, how can we make the most of COP? We need to understand that for COP to be effective, then there has to be policy accountability. So we need to hold our countries, our policy holders accountable to their commitments. A lot of times, year in, year out, you see people go to COP, they make decisions, they make commitments on behalf of their countries, and they get back to their countries and do the direct opposite of what they have pledged to do. So we need to understand what the process is like. We need to understand how things work so that we can be able to hold our governments accountable. Like I said, local action is very key here. And intention is everything. COP for young people especially shouldn't just be somewhere you go so that you can say, oh, I have ticked this country off my bucket list. It is a place where we need to advocate for a climate just future. It's a place where we need to think about future generations and even our own generation right now, especially considering the impact of extreme climate events that all parts of the world are witnessing right now. So back to what I said earlier, you need to be able to look at the various things that are discussed at COP and say, oh, this speaks to me in terms of my areas of interest, my expertise, and what is happening in my country. Yeah, and then you're able to follow up with conversations around that. And that is when you can build your capacity and say, I want to start making a change in this aspect. No one can make a change in all aspects of the climate space at the same time. Yeah, so because there's also no constitution or rule book for COP, you need to find a community of support. You need to find ways where you can get credible information about what to do, what COP is, what the UNFCCC is, and all of that. Especially also, how do you as an individual make change while not being caught up in the frenzy of activities that happen at COP. COP is also a place to strengthen international solidarity, especially for us as climate advocates. You know, as we face climate skeptics, people who are even like Adaisical about the climate movement and all of that, it's easy to get jaded on this journey. So when you go to COP, you have the ability to see other people doing different things in their own countries too. You're able to exchange ideas, ask for what is working in their context, you know, adapt solutions, share your own solutions to make collaborations and all of that. So it's very important for you to be able to develop a pitch before you attend COP so that when you're speaking to people, you're hitting the nail on the head, because trust me, you have a short amount of time to make an impression because there are just thousands and thousands of people at COP. Yeah, Muskan, please, next slide. So, what are the major highlights of COP27? COP is not somewhere we just attend the previous one and then we don't follow up with what happens and we just go the following year and, you know, we don't even look back at what happened earlier. So for us to be able to approach COP28 strategically, we have to understand what we did at COP27. So at COP27, the Loss and Damage Finance Fund was established, which is called the Sharm el-Sheikh Loss and Damage Finance Facility, was established to be able to support countries that are heavily impacted by climate change in attending to their loss and damage within these countries. This year, we hope to be able to formalize and properly institutionalize that loss and damage finance fund. Trust me, last year, I think the maximum was, okay, the best we could achieve was the establishment of the fund, which was also based off the efforts of a lot of young people, a lot of climate advocates across the global south and global north. Also, there was an increased focus on climate finance last year at Sharm el-Sheikh, and it is also informing what is happening in different countries in the world as per how to finance climate solutions. There was also a strong emphasis on the means of implementation. Remember, we said the means of implementation is kind of weak because there are no sanctions on countries who do not follow up with their negotiations. So there was emphasis on encouraging countries to follow their commitments with actions. Then the critical role of the private sector was also established at COP. We've seen private sector initiatives contributing to the climate space, and that was really highlighted in terms of funding, in terms of solutions to climate change itself. The private sector has been contributing well to it. But as we talk about what the private sector has been doing, we should also bear in mind a bit about greenwashing and what it is. Yeah, so aside that, there was also talks on mitigation and adaptation at COP27. Yeah, so one of the major things that happened was that we had the very first Children and Youth Pavilion at COP27, and that pavilion hosted discussions that were basically focused on young people. We know that majority of the world population now is young, and that means that young people are also going to be the ones that will face the impact of climate change more in the near future. So we have to be empowered. We have to understand what this is, empower ourselves to also educate other young people and push for policies, push for climate policies that speak to the young people in different countries. One thing that happened was that there was a face down of coal power, and I would like to also take note of that word there, face down, not face out. So that's one of the technicalities of decision at COP. Instead of everybody to say, okay, we wanted to phase out coal, some countries did not agree to that. So instead of phasing out, they could not, don't forget, all countries must agree to any decision that's going to be taken. So instead of phasing out, because some countries did not, they objected to that. So it had to be a phase down, which was what everybody agreed to. And that is one of the reasons we say that the implementation is weak, because it slows down progress. Also, increased adaptation support was emphasized for developing countries. A lot of countries need to be supported with knowledge exchange, with finances, and this is very critical because a lot of developing countries do not have these resources. They don't even have the wherewithal to adapt to climate change. Transparency was also a big thing on the table because we were looking for a system where we could strengthen the accountability of countries to the Paris Agreement. So most of the time, the NDCs are tailored towards the Paris Agreement. And what we see is that people just come, like we have established, speak all the English or have them in their NDCs. And the NDCs become, in a lot of countries, the NDCs become documents that are just kept on the shelf, and the actions of the country are not in line with the NDCs. So with all of this in mind, we need to start looking at what we are looking at as we approach COP28. COP28 this year is going to be held in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, from November 30th to December 11-12. And it is going to cut across 4 major themes: technology and innovation, inclusion, finance, and also frontline communities. So basically, climate justice is going to be a key part of the discussions. And we have the agenda for each day. Now, it doesn't mean that nothing is going to happen outside these themes for each day. It just means that most of the discussions for each day are going to be centered around these discussions. There will also be events and side events that are not directly related to these events, but it means the majority of these events on each day will be focused on all of this. So you can see for December 7th, it's a day of rest. No, nothing happens on that day. Everybody stays in their accommodation, their hotels, whatever, and then we recharge for the following week. So the first week runs from November 30th to December 6th, and the second week runs from December 8th to 11th. So December 8th is the day of youth, children, education, and skills. So if you're interested in how climate change affect youth, children, you're interested in capacity building and all of that, youth aid, there will be lots of activities. And so that's the way it is for all of the days here. But however, the 4 themes that are cross-cutting will just kind of permeate all of the discussions throughout COP. So what are we expecting as we approach COP28 based on what happened at COP27? We are looking at the huge focus on emissions reduction through an energy transition plan that works, land use reform, and food systems transformation. Even at the Africa Climate Week, there was a lot of focus on the food, water, energy nexus and how all of these things contribute to insecurity and all of that. We also hope that parties will mobilize solutions for vulnerable countries and operationalize the loss and damage fund. It's not enough to just have that loss and damage finance facility. We need to be able to set up administrative mechanisms. So we are supposed to have things like how much is going to be contributed, who is going to contribute how much, how is it going to be disbursed, and what are the conditions behind the funding. All of these are what we expect. And we are also looking at the global goal on adaptation so that we can have a uniform adaptation ambition in our NDCs, and we'll see how we can also from them move to a just transition work program. Based off the GST, the global stock take, we hope that there's going to be a lot of focus on global stocktake, especially because of the recent report that was released, and it's going to be covering mitigation adaptations. Countries will want to see how they are. We have seen that countries are not on, like all of the world, we are not on the path to achieving 2 degrees, talk less 1.5. So countries need to sit up and get back to the drawing board, ask themselves how they want to move forward from this report, because it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. And we also think that civil society should come together and ask for commitment of countries to an equitable fossil fuel phase out. So what exactly can you expect at the COP28 venue? It's going to be held at the Expo City, Dubai, and it will have different facilities aside the rooms for plenaries, aside the exhibition booths, aside the side event rooms. It's going to have a police station, it's going to have medical facilities, there's going to be a food court and all of that to make life easier while you're within the COP venue. And then the green zone, and then for the green zone, we are going to have it as close as possible to the blue zone so that it's easier for people to navigate between the two zones. And then we all already know that COP28 Blue Zone is going to have the negotiating rooms. It's going to have the side event rooms, plenaries, exhibitions, and all of that. Then the Green Zone is going to be the zone that would host the other activities like exhibitions of organizations and all of that. It will also have 3 different hubs. There's a technology and innovation hub, there's a decarbonization hub, and there's a knowledge hub. That means the things that are going to be happening in this hub will be centered on the theme of each of these hubs. Now, how do you navigate the host country itself and the host city? The first thing is for us to get the travel arrangement sorted. First, we need to look at the visa, flight, and accommodation. Before you even go through the visa, flight, and accommodation, you should get accredited by the UNFCCC, which is what you use to request for your visa. And I think I'll give it to the UAE this year. It is seamless. I got mine in less than 10 minutes. Yeah, and then you can then book your flight and accommodation. Please, it is very critical for you to confirm the entry requirements for your country. I realize that as a Nigerian, even though I have been vaccinated, I still have to do a negative PCR test. So it's very important for you to confirm what the entry requirements are based on your country, because it changes, so that you don't get delayed at the airport or still miss your flight. Now, getting to Dubai, you have the Expo City itself. It's about 40 minutes from the airport, and there's a metro line from the airport to the Expo City. Basically, most times you may want to stop by at your hotel first, but that's just to give you an idea of what the distance is from the Expo City to the airport. Then in terms of transportation, there's usually this NOI card that is used in Dubai, which is used to move, which you can use to move around, use it to pay for your train and bus rides, and they are very accessible. And the rides are usually between 3.5 dirhams to 7.5 dirhams. That's about $2-ish. Yeah, and then you can, when you are on the train rides especially, you need to look out for the male and female sections of the train. It is very important to be culturally sensitive, culturally aware of where you are. So there are signages everywhere. There are signages everywhere, and the people there are helpful. Even if you make a mistake of entering the wrong coach, they'll just point you to the right coach, because I don't know if it's going to be relaxed, but I know that you can be fined if you are in the wrong coach. So if you want to use a taxi to move around, you can download the Karim app by Hala Taxi. It is cheaper than Uber in Dubai, and it takes you around, and you can also pay with that using your NY card. So your NY card is your transport card. It comes like your ATM card, your debit or credit card. That's the way it is, and then you swipe, and then you get the money gets deducted from that card account, and you can also recharge it at metro stations and bus stations. Communication and data privacy. Okay, so for communication in terms of language, English and Arabic are the major languages there. They are widely spoken, and they also have signs that are translated in both languages. So for everywhere you see an Arabic inscription, there's going to be an English inscription. On the metro, everywhere it's like that. And we are getting to somewhere where we need to be a bit more careful about our data privacy, which has to do with communication. there are SIM cards that are given at the airport free of charge, more like a tourist kind of thing where you enter the country to make it easier for you. But we have also had reports of people saying, oh, you may be careful. You may want to be careful of such SIM cards. And we have also had advisory saying that it might not be very advisable to connect to Wi-Fi that are outside the COP venue, because sometimes some of this Wi-Fi are monitored. And this we know, please, as much as we all have our opinions about different countries and different people and different places, try as much as possible to
Mujida, your voice is not very clear right now.
Okay, so can you hear me?
It's still not clear. Can you
Please
mute
give
and
me,
unmute?
please give me. Okay, so is it any better? Can anyone hear me? Yes. Now, can you hear me? Okay, so I'll try to switch off the video to see if I can improve the connectivity. Let's see. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, it's a bit better. I'm going to raise my. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. So I was saying that in terms of data privacy, it is advised that we should be careful of the SIM cards at the airport. You never can tell. And then it is also advised that we do not connect to Wi-Fi outside the COP28 venue, because you never can tell, they might be monitored as well. Then, however it is, you would have opinions of country, of people, although we can generally, Dubai is a very diverse city. You have people of almost all nationalities there, and things are really flexible compared to even other parts of the UAE. But then, please, if you have any criticism, please keep it low. Let the tone below. We don't advise that it's something that you just air without considering the situation around you. You know, so that is it about communication and data privacy there. In terms of water, there's this common thing that you don't drink the water in the UAE. The water that comes from the tap is not advisable to be ingested in any form in the UAE. So you may have to work on getting bottled water and all of that. In November, usually around that time of the year, the temperature in Dubai is usually between 16 and 26 degrees Celsius. So for people coming from countries such as Nigeria, you may want to just have a light sweater, and because you're not used to these temperatures. And for people coming from colder regions, you may want to just pack clothes that are suitable for you based on the weather you are used to, wherever you're coming from. And modest dressing is advised. I'm sure it's not mandatory for you to wear a hijab or anything. No, there are lots of people who don't even do that there, but you should just try to wear something that covers you from your shoulder to your knee at least. Yeah. And aside that, you should also make sure that you don't cross-dress. It is an offense in the UAE. It is not allowed. And if you need any support, please just dial 999 for the police. The ambulance is 998, and the fire department is 997. So with this, I believe that you should be fine, because really, and you can also be assured of your safety. There's usually a lot of high security in the UAE, so you should be fine, and it is not as scary as everything. Yeah, finally, this is our last chance at keeping our 1.5 degrees alive. So when we are attending COP this year, we should be more intentional and ensure that we build our capacities so that we can push for as much climate smart policies as we can, while also thinking about the just transition. Yeah, so that's it for this presentation. If you want to know more about all of these things that we have discussed, you can sign up to the Care About Climate course that is called the International Climate Policy and Advocacy course. I'm sure we're going to be having the details of that in the chat section, and you can also check our website and our social media pages for more of that. Right now, I would want to hand over back to Muskan to take us through the other parts of the session. Thank you very much. Okay, so maybe while Muskan tries to figure out our audio, which might just be due to connectivity issues, I would want to step in and introduce our negotiators as briefly as I can. Apologies for that while we wait for Muskan. So we have with us today Marie-Claire Graf. She is from the Switzerland and she is a negotiator for the global north. It is very important that we have voices like this in the room so that we can hear from the horse's mouth, those who have been in negotiating rooms, how the magic happens and how all of those things, the magic behind the decision text and all of that we get to read outside, how they happen. So I am going to allow Marie-Claire to introduce herself, and as soon as our second negotiator joins, we are also going to ask her to introduce herself. So over to you, Marie-Claire. Please introduce yourself, and then we ask you the questions on our mind. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, if you can also allow me to show my video if you wish to see my video. Thank you so much. And also, actually, super exciting. Axel Eriksson is also here from Sweden, who has also been a negotiator. This is super exciting that he could join. He was traveling. Okay, my video is also starting. Fantastic. Now we can actually see. So you can actually also ask him to join, so we can actually do this together. Yeah. So as already mentioned, my name is Marie-Claire. I'm from Switzerland, and I have been a negotiator for the government of Switzerland, and I've actually been, in fact, the youngest negotiator. And after I have been a negotiator myself, I really thought that we need to train more young people in this space and to ensure that we have many more voices and also diverse voices from the global north and the global south, from all the different regions. And I see Axel joining in from the train, so fantastic. And so I set up the Youth Negotiators Academy and the Climate Youth Negotiator Program to ensure that we have many, many more voices at the decision-making table. But yeah, I'm handing over to Axel to introduce himself.
Now I could unmute. Great. So my name is Axel Eriksson. I'm from Sweden, and I'm one of two youth delegates in the Swedish delegation, which means that I don't negotiate, but I am in the delegation to bring in young people's perspectives and serve as a bridge between the Swedish delegation and youth movement, whether in Sweden or globally. Nothing else. I'll hand over.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. We are really happy to have you here with us today. So I don't know who would like to go first, whether Marie-Claire or you. The first question here is, we need you to give us the backstory. How do negotiations happen? We are really interested in knowing all of that.
Well, we can alternate. I can start and then actually you can come in and afterwards you take it over. So I think we have to understand that these negotiations items do not just come up like this, right? There is like a long story of history to all of these negotiating items. That's what makes it very challenging and actually very hard for young people to come in, because there are people sitting there who are literally there from the first COP. They have been basically shaping the whole history, and they know obviously all these negotiating items. And then, you know, you come into the room and then you hear like all these acronyms flowing around and decisions. And then, you know, like 2009, I was like, what have I been doing back in 2009? You know, I was still like a child. So I think it's very important to understand that there is a huge history to it. There are a lot of negotiations that have been happening, and that's what makes it challenging. But it should not prevent us from engaging, because there are a lot of beautiful people in the space who are happy to help us. You know, the negotiators are happy to support. They are like really wise NGO people, you know, who have been like observing these processes for a long time. They're also happy to help. So they can help you to understand the history and also some of the leverage points. So where can we come in? Where can we, you know, like actually, you know, be this drop who can actually change something? Because that's what we're all there for. We are there for to change something in these negotiations. And there are a lot of different roles. You can do this through the negotiations by sitting literally at the table and speak, or like Axel, he can talk about his role afterwards, or by, you know, being outside of the space, not being affiliated to any country and doing advocacy. And I think the beauty is if we all come together and if we are like quite smart on how we're bringing all of these different actions together, we can actually influence the negotiations. But handing over to you, Axel, for contributing.
Yep. So if you hear some background noises from the train, but I'll try to be clear. So I really agree that it's very much based on, you know, some people having a lot of knowledge since before and have been in the process forever, basically, and some people coming in new with very fresh ideas and, you know, actually soon being able to continue shaping the process. So I really think it's important to remember that it's not only dominated by those who have been in it since the start, but also there are initiatives that are continuously driving the process forward. And except the actual negotiators, there are people behind the scenes who kind of fit in to the negotiators. So for example, NGOs having meetings with negotiators to bring in their priorities, which are sometimes raised by the negotiators, with the negotiator saying that this is what, for example, Sweden stands for, whereas it might have been suggested by an NGO. So there are also a lot of invisible kind of negotiators who whose perspective are being raised by the actual negotiators. And in my case, I'm one of the people who kind of try to fit in priorities to those actually talking on behalf of Sweden, because I don't talk on behalf of Sweden, but I can always kind of let them know what are young people expecting of you, and then they might choose to raise some of those issues or might choose not to. So I think that's also very important, but it's not only limited to the actual negotiators.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that perspectives. It's really important that we hear the voice of somebody who is young and is in that space, and it's quite motivating and inspiring, and it gives us hope that more and more young people will be able to get into these spaces in due time. Okay, so I would also like to ask you, how best can delegates connect with their country negotiators? So we understand that it's best to connect. COP is not the best place for you to connect to your country negotiators, because most of the decisions would have been pre-agreed upon before they even leave their own countries. Now, we are about 3 weeks away from COP. if I am a person on this call and I have never understood the need to engage my country negotiator, what tips do you have for me in the next 3 weeks, or even let's say I'm not able to connect to my negotiator at home when we get to COP? How best do you think that I can still make a difference with my country negotiator at this short time?
Yeah. So the first thing to be mentioned is that persons do matter, or it does matter to have connections with people. And I mean, it might be someone in your national ministry who can kind of connect you with some of the delegation members from your national delegation. So really try to think of what contacts you already have that might be part of a bigger network, or might actually negotiate themselves. So that's one thing. Another thing is that if you haven't had a chance to get all these contacts, don't worry about it, because there are also at the UNFCCC webpage, there's a list of basically the focal points of each country. So you can email basically any one of them and yeah, ask for a meeting, or just try to get in touch, try to find some way to bring up your priorities, or just be able to stay in touch with them. And I can share the link for that in the chat. But those are two things. Try to use personal connections, and use the mailing list on the UNFCCC website.
Yeah, maybe just to complement what Axel mentioned, I think it's really important what you said, because still many people believe, okay, I go to COP and I have an impact there, but then they kind of clash with the reality that everything is already pre-agreed. And especially for young people, sometimes it's really frustrating because, we take leave, or we have to leave from university, spend our own money, and go there. And then our impact it can be very limited if you're not well prepared. So I think the 2 points Axel mentioned are really fantastic. And I think moreover, many countries now also have local conferences of youth, for example, which is a beautiful occasion where you can really create a momentum back home, invite many young people. So it's not only you, but actually it's a whole ecosystem of young people, different NGOs and everyone coming together. And then you can actually, for example, on the last day for maybe a closing panel or whatever you feel is right, invite some of these negotiators, some of these delegates, so they can actually, see what young people want. And I can proactively really incorporate this in their position papers. And what I really saw in this last 10 years of I've been engaged, it's a lot about, trust building. Because in the beginning, sometimes young people are seeing oh my God, now we have again, another group of activists who want something, and they might listen to you, but they're not really taking you seriously. Which can be really frustrating. I have been there myself. But, suddenly when you create trust, when you build this trust with them, they actually listen to you. And at one point when you kind of get through the shell, and really realize that actually it has a lot of value to listen to young people. This is your moment to really bring in all your policy ideas, and also be quite concrete. If you just tell them, look, we need more funding. For example, one of the topics will be about the loss and damage fund. So if you just go to negotiate and say we want that you are paying into the loss and damage fund, they say okay, great, yes, but they might not, Axel and myself coming from countries who should give more financing to the loss and damage fund, for example. They might listen to you, but then they tell you 100 reasons why they cannot do this. So I think it's also about, building the trust, being smart on how to propose different things, really understand the nuances of the discussion, to then actually come forward, coordinated with some other groups to bring something which might be new, maybe bring a different perspective into the play. And I know a lot of NGOs also do fantastic work, so really also draw from the collective experience on what is around. There are always, for example, a lot of reports on innovative ideas on how we can, for example, fund loss and damage. So I feel it's also really our chance to be creative, to be a bridge builder, to come up with maybe unconventional ideas which have not been thought through. And because we are kind of the new kids on the ground, literally speaking, we can actually be a little bit different. And we should not just follow while there are rules and procedures, we shouldn't just follow exactly how things have been done in the past.
Well, thank you so much for those perspectives. Thank you for sharing. It's very important, yes, and I really appreciate the link to the focal points that were shared. In fact, I had also gone to the link to find the Nigerian focal point and find a way to connect with her, because that is really important. And then we also have to build trust, and at the end of the day, we should be innovative and prefer creative solutions. Thank you so much for sharing. And at this point, I would like to Welcome, Nisreen. She is our second negotiator for today, and I'll allow her to introduce herself briefly, and then we get to ask her a couple of questions as well. Hi, Nisreen, are you there?
Yes. Do you hear me? Do you see me? Everything is well?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. Do you hear me? Do you see me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. So I was asking for you to introduce yourself. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here. It's been a while since I interacted with climate movement, new joining specifically. My name is Nasina Saim, and I'm from Sudan. The I was the chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on December, and I was negotiator with the African Group of Negotiators also until last COP. And I've been, I think next COP is my 10th COP. Yeah, my first one was 2013. It was in Warsaw in Poland. So I've been doing this for quite a while now. And as someone from Sudan, we unfortunately climate change is not on the top of our agenda this year because we have a very bad war happening where 10,000 lost their lives and 12 millions are now between refugees and IDPs, including myself, unfortunately. And so this year, our delegation decided not to give accreditations to a lot of people. And actually, for Bonn, they didn't give to anyone because the war was only 2 months. Now the war is 6 months, and they realized that it's not going to stop. Yet climate change will not also stop because we have war in Sudan. So I think they will give some accreditations to some people, but unfortunately not youth. And my background is physics, so I did physics in my undergrad, and I did a master in renewable energy technology. And currently, I'm doing some work on transnational governance, and most of my work is focusing on climate policy for the past years. Yeah, it's what's happening in Sudan is so sad, and what's even more sad that is actually no one is talking about it, no one is knowing what's happening, and I think, well, one of the biggest problems we are facing right now that UAE is actually accused by supporting the militia, which is one part of the war. So I think also this is why our focal point is not really giving accreditations because they are worried that some people will go and do some actions there in order to stop the war. So I think there's a lot of conflict of interest. Maybe some of you or all of you heard about the different groups who are working on stopping mega oil and gas projects that will happen in UAE itself. Well, I actually see that this is an opportunity to hold countries into account, especially countries who are hosting the COP. Saying you are hosting the COP and like 300 kilometers away, there is a mega carbon project, or mega carbon bomb, as they call it, waiting to explode at any moment. And it's time to start implementing what you're talking about. And yeah, I think this is a very long introduction. Sorry, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nisreen. It was very good to hear that context from you. So I really pray that peace returns to Sudan and all parts of the world soon. We really need that. So in line with what you said about the projects and all of that happening that are not climate and contribute to climate change, how do you think as young people we can contribute to policies around this? You know, one of the ways we can do this is by being a negotiator ourselves or learning to be a negotiator, so that when we get into the spaces, we know just what to say. And that will take me to the issue of the Young Negotiators Academy. Somebody has asked a question earlier, and they're saying, how can people get into the Young Negotiators Academy? And if it's going to be the government, how do people nudge their government to join the program? Can you shed more light on it?
Yeah, happy to.
Well, regarding the question on the academy, I think Marie-Claire is more in a position to answer that question, as I existed before the academy. Unfortunately, I feel ancient right now. But when I started negotiating, I think it was 2016, and the academy is kind of new. So I think Marie-Claire will be more in position to answer that question. So I'll give her the floor, and I will come back on the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the question. And yeah, I'm also ancient because I've also been negotiating before the academy existed. And actually, this was the reason why I set it up, because I found it very challenging to actually negotiate without getting the appropriate training and support. So there are basically two routes. So to be a negotiator ultimately means that you need to be on the governmental delegation, you need to get a governmental mandate to be able to speak on behalf of the government, right? So this can only be done through your government. So for example, if you're from Peru, you would need to talk to the delegation from Peru. Axel shared before the document, so you see also who's on the delegation. You can also reach out to them. Do it well ahead of time. If you're reaching out to them right now, they might still give you a badge, that's fine, but they will not give you like a negotiating mandate, just like right out of the blue. And very often it's also many countries are restricting it to governmental employees only. There are some countries who are more open. I mean, I was never working for the government and I was still negotiating. So there's like quite some nuanced approaches from a variety of different countries. So if you want to join the delegation, you need to go through a country. So the Youth Negotiators Academy is basically training young people who are part of the governmental delegation, actually going to be negotiating. And you already heard from Axel that he has a little bit of an in-between position as well. So I'm happy to support on this. Nevertheless, the training which the Youth Negotiators Academy is giving to the young negotiators, we are just currently working on it to actually making it publicly accessible. It's a quite intense course. Axel can talk more about this. So every week or every second week, you have some sessions and interactions. So it's quite a lot. You kind of skills and understanding and knowledge you need to not drown in the system, because it's really complex, right? And also, like, I think when young people are there, or many young people who are actually have the chance to go to COP really want to make an influence, not just want to be there, for the inspiring speeches and everyone tells you how awesome you are, but then no one really cares, because that's not what we are there for. So this being said, we're gonna make all the content available for everyone to view. It's gonna be most probably on the UNITAR's climate lane. They have like a web page interface called Climate Change Learn, where they have like 20 courses. They're really cool. You should actually check it out. I can send you the link afterwards in the chat. So we're probably going to make it or publicize everything there, so you can actually get the training the young negotiators are getting as well. But again, if you want to be part of the delegation, you would need to contact your delegation. And we already do this. So we work with almost 60 governments together from all around the world. So there's a chance that actually maybe your government is already part, and maybe next year you can actually apply for one of these roles. So there is a variety of different possibilities to be engaged in these processes. But also, just to mention, as we said in the beginning, you can make change in the policy world without being a negotiator. I think it's really important to mention that every role is very important. There's different responsibilities come with the different roles, different limitations are coming with the different roles. And I think it's also important for you to understand, how do you wish to make the impact you want to see in the process?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Axel wants to add to that. Please go ahead.
Yeah, very briefly, I think what's good with the Youth Negotiators Academy is not only that it gives training and capacity, it also provides a community, or it just brings together people who are in quite similar situations, who might be facing very similar challenges. And I think that's very helpful, just to be able to share like what do I find difficult in my role with others who, yeah, might be struggling with the same things, might be very new to this negotiator role, might be facing hurdles, being young and maybe not being listened to. And I really think that kind of community can, yeah, very much support us, very much make us more confident in what we're doing, what the purpose is of us being at the COP, because I think all of us have a clear purpose and want to make change. And I think really having this community where you can do that together is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us know about all of that. It's really important, and these are really powerful nuggets that you are sharing. Okay, so I think at this point, I would want to go back to Nisreen and ask a question about observers. We know that usually observers do not get into these meeting rooms, but at the same time, there are rare cases where meetings are opened and observer organizations are allowed to nominate a few people to attend. And if, just in case an observer is in that kind of room and they want to lend a voice to a decision or a negotiation, especially when it is a dissenting voice, they don't agree with what is being said, how best can they do this? How do you interject and say, oh, we as this constituency, we do not agree to this because of X, Y, Z? Nisreen, do you want to let us in on that?
Yes, actually, nowadays more and more meetings and negotiations are open to observers. I remember last COP, I think only 2 agenda items out of 68 was not allowed for the observers to join. So most of the rooms were like occupied with observers. The problem and the most problematic thing that is somehow not fixable, that rooms have capacities and it's a first come first serve basis. So even if the room is open for observers, but member states were very much interested and they sent too many delegations to the room and the room became full, then you will not be inside. So it's a challenge of space more than the challenge of being allowed or not. Most of the agenda that have big drama around it, sometimes they don't allow observers inside, and this is normally is requested by one of the member states, so it's not a procedure at all. But what this procedure is, they don't allow media in unless parties requested that the media should be inside. So and another thing is some agenda items actually have reserved seats for some observers, which is the constituencies, like the women constituency, like the indigenous people constituency, like the younger, which is the youth constituency. And many times you are these constituencies actually given the space to speak, especially in the big plenaries at the opening and the closing and so on. I think observers have bigger role. And remember in Warsaw, the African civil society decided to take the streets because negotiations were not like going well. So all of the African observers, NGOs, walked out the conference. It was a very big, massive situation where all of them went out, and it made a huge impact. I remember also in many cases where I think it was in Bonn, a lot of civil society activists made a big standout in front of the chamber room, in the secretariat when the COP presidency actually addressed the parties as some sort of like expressing their opinion about the presidency and why people like the government choose this person or and so on. Also a lot of observers are there to support the negotiating groups. For example, I know that the African group of negotiators have an annual regular meeting with the PACJA, with the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, which is one of the biggest organizations in Africa. And they seek their help in many things: advocacy, media. Also, they have joint press conferences if things are not going well. Also, all of the observers are tracking the negotiation. There is a lot of newsletters summarizing the sphere and how it's going. There is the ECHO, and there is the TWN, and there is a lot of them actually. So even if you are not inside of the room actually negotiating, there is a lot of things that you can actually do outside. Before I start negotiating, I was doing a lot of other things, and this year also I will be back to do other things. Also, for example, this year I'm more focusing on academia, and we have like 3 studies to publish and so on. So really using COP as an atmosphere to make an impact, and this impact doesn't have to be always the negotiation text. And by the way, a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of projects and deals happens in the corridors, in the receptions, in the breakfasts, in the all of the informal meetings that are not really negotiating. And yeah, it's making a difference doesn't mean to be is a various of things.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So
Back to you.
Yeah, so we've seen the different. We've also seen how the power of networking can help people to make a change, because looking at these informal meetings and all of that, you basically leverage on the power of networking to be able to strike these relationships, build a relationship, and then push your agenda to them. So as we approach the end of the session, I would like to ask each of you, to give us one tip for budding negotiators. Give us just one tip in 30 seconds each, and then we are going to wrap up. So I'm going to start from Marie-Claire.
Well, I would suggest don't be afraid. Ultimately, they are humans. And I think very often we are intimidated by, oh, they are negotiators, and so we're not approaching them. But I think it's really important for us to stand up, to bring across what we want to tell them, to stay in contact, to build these relations, to show them that we're interested, that we're following up after the COP. So basically, after the COP is the start to prepare for the next COP or for the next session, be engaged in the process and really, really contact them. So if you see them, as Nisreen just mentioned, queuing for the coffee, this is your moment to ask them. If you see them passing in the corridor, that's your moment to ask. So I really encourage all of you to use the moment and the opportunities of speaking to them. Handing over to Axel.
So my tip would be, I remember what your particular story is. Where do you come from? What have you gone through regarding climate change? What perspective can you uniquely carry to the COP? And let that drive you. Show kind of that you are engaged in this, and show that you care about the better future, basically, through the story that you are carrying. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, it was. Nisreen?
I think read a lot, and because more knowledge you have, more impact you will make. So choose an agenda item, or read about all of the agenda items first, then choose an agenda item, and then you need to go to the history and see how the development of the negotiations, how did this agenda item start, and what is the country position. I mean, when you speak like mouthful of knowledge and information, it shows and it gets this energy to other people to say, oh, this person knows a lot. And then you will be entitled of asking more and more tasks, asking more and more influence, asking more and more existence within your team or delegation or wherever. But you need to do your homework first.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to come back to summarize that. In 30 seconds, somebody has their hand up. Can we hear from Vikash Ranjan? 30 seconds, please.
Yeah. Hi everyone. My question is that how we can get the funded participation to COP28? Thanks.
Okay, so who wants to go for that? Funded participation to COP28. So Nisreen, do you want to lend your voice to that?
Yes, what was the question again? Sorry.
Funded participation to COP28.
Funding.
Are there opportunities for funding? Yes.
Yeah, actually, funding is a big question. I normally start mobilizing since June. Yeah, I think there is a small, very small little chance you will find new funding now, as we are less than a month before the COP. But my suggestion for next year is to start early. And as early you start, as more guaranteed you get. So start from March, or like June is the maximum where you should start mobilizing for resources to attend COP at the end of the year. Because also most of the funding agencies have a financial cycle, and they need to know what they are doing minimum 4 months ahead. So really my advice to you, start from March and not after June. Like June is the last month where you should start mobilizing for resources.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Axel, do you have any ideas in case the person is a young person who wants funding at this time? Any tips?
Well, I usually hear about a few funding opportunities in different networks that I'm part of. There are, I don't know how many different groups and different channels. So really do take the chance to join those, even though it might, be a lot of information, but there are a lot of opportunities that young people want to share in their different networks. So just keep an eye out for those kinds of networks. Yeah, and just reach out to me if you want to get some tips about that.
All right, thank you so much. So to everyone who is interested in funding for COP, the key is to start early and then join communities where you can get information. Information travels in circles, so you have to be within those communities. And at this point, we are going to wrap up the session. On behalf of Care About Climate and our participants, we really thank you all for joining. We thank our negotiators, and I'm going to reiterate their last words. Marie-Claire says, when you're approaching negotiators, do not be afraid, do not be intimidated. Axel says, you tell your story from your own context. You're able to drive the point home. And Nisreen says you should read, research, because this is very important before you make impact. One incorrect opinion can rubbish the whole of the good points you're making. So it's very important to speak from a fact-based perspective. And with that, we say thank you so much to everyone who has joined this session. And we hope to continue engagement on our social media. And we hope to see you at COP. And if you're not attending COP, you can also follow up with our COP from home updates on our social media profiles. And if you are also interested in taking the International Climate Policy and Advocacy course, you can check our website, our Instagram page or Twitter, as well as the chat for this information. Thank you so much once again, and I hope to see you some other time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.